Story 1. The sun was setting as the young couple hiked through the national park. They had been planning this trip for 3 months. As they were finally here, they were excited to explore the trails and see all the wildlife. They had been hiking for a few hours when they came to a clearing. In the middle of the clearing was a large tree. The couple decided to take a break and sit down under the tree. As they were sitting there, they heard a noise. They looked up and saw a large dog-like creature standing in the shadows. The creature had glowing red eyes and sharp teeth. The couple was terrified. They didn't know what to do. The creature started to walk towards them. They stood up and ran away, but the creature was faster. The creature chased them through the woods. The couple could hear it getting closer and closer. They were running out of breath. Finally, they reached the edge of the woods. They ran out into the open, hoping to escape, but the creature was right behind them. The couple ran as fast as they could. They didn't stop until they reached their car. They got in and locked the doors. They sat there for a long time, too scared to move. They didn't know what had just happened, but they knew they would never forget it. The next day, the couple went to the ranger station and told the ranger what had happened. The ranger didn't believe them at first, but then they heard other reports of a dog-like creature in the woods. The ranger started to investigate, but they never found the creature. The creature is still out there, somewhere in the woods, and who knows who it will chase next. Story 2. The sun was setting as the lone hikers made their way through the national park. They had been hiking for hours and they were tired. They just wanted to get back to their campsite and relax. As they were hiking, they heard a noise. They stopped and listened. The noise came again. It sounded like something was moving through the underbrush. The hikers were starting to feel uneasy. They slowly backed away from the noise. They didn't want to get too close to whatever it was. The noise stopped. The hikers stood there for a moment, listening. They didn't hear anything else. They started to hike again, but they were cautious now. They kept an eye out for the source of the noise. They had been hiking for a few more minutes when they saw something move from the shadows. They stopped and stared. It was a dog-like creature. Its tail, it was tall and muscular with long, sharp claws and teeth. Its fur was a dark gray, and its eyes glowed red. The hiker was terrified. They didn't know what to do. The creature started to walk towards them. The hikers turned and ran. They ran as fast as they could, but the creature was faster. The creature chased the hikers through the woods. The hikers could hear it getting closer and closer. They were running out of breath. One of the hikers tripped and fell. They looked up and saw a creature looming over them. The creature opened its mouth and it let out a loud growl. It let out a low growl. The hiker could see its sharp teeth. The hiker closed their eyes and waited for the end, but the end never came. When the hiker opened their eyes, the creature was gone. As the hiker stood up and brushed themselves off, they couldn't believe they had survived. They didn't know what had happened, but they knew they would never forget it. After the hikers met up, they started to hike back to the campsite. They were more cautious now, but they were also more determined. They would not let the creature chase them away. As the hikers reached the campsite without incident, they crawled into their tent and fell asleep. The next day, the hikers went to the ranger station and told the rangers what had happened. The ranger didn't know what to believe at first, but as they heard reports of the dog-like creature in the woods, they knew to take it more seriously. They started to investigate, but they never found any creature. The hikers never went back to their national park. They were too afraid of seeing the creature again, but they still think about it sometimes. They wonder what it was and where it came from. The hikers will never know for sure, but they will never forget the night they were chased by the Dogman. Story 3. Sarah and David were stoked to finally be hiking in the national park. They had been planning this trip for months. They were ready to explore the trails and see all the wildlife. They had been hiking for a few hours when they came to a clearing. They decided to take a break and sit down under the big tree. As they were sitting there, they heard a noise. They looked up and saw a big dog-like creature standing there in the shadows. Sarah and David were confused. They didn't know what to do. The creature started walking towards them. Sarah stood up and screamed. The creature stood up and looked at her. "Please," she said, "we don't want any trouble." The creature growled and took a step toward them. David grabbed Sarah's hand and they ran as fast as they could, but the creature was faster than them. The creature chased them through the woods. Sarah and David could hear it getting closer and closer. They were running out of breath. Finally, they reached the edge of the clearing. They ran out into the open and hoping to escape, but the creature was right behind them. Sarah and David ran as fast as they could. They didn't stop until they reached their car. They got in and locked the doors. They sat there for a few long hours, too scared to move. They didn't know what just happened, but they knew they would never forget it. Sarah and David never went back into the national park. They were too afraid of seeing the creature again, but they still think about it sometimes. They wonder what it was and where it came from. Sarah and David would never know for sure, but they would never forget the night they were chased by the Dogman. Story 4. The sun was setting as the young couple hiked through the forest. They had been planning this trip for months. They were finally here. They were excited to explore the park and see all the wildlife. They had been hiking for a few hours when they came to a clearing. In the middle of the clearing was a large rock. The couple decided to sit down on the rock and rest. As they sat there, they heard a noise. It sounded like something was moving in the bushes. The couple looked at each other, their eyes wide with fear. The noise came again, closer this time. The couple stood up and ready to run. But before they could move, a creature stepped out of the bushes. It was a Dogman. The Dogman was tall and muscular, with the body of a man and the head of a wolf. Its eyes were yellow and glowing. Its teeth were sharp and pointed. The couple screamed and ran. The Dogman chased after them, its howls echoing through the forest. The couple ran as fast as they could, but the Dogman was gaining on them. They could feel its hot breath on their necks. Just when they thought they were going to be caught, the couple came to a river. They jumped into the river and swam to the other side. The Dogman stopped at the river's edge, its eyes burning with rage. It howled one last time before disappearing into the forest. The couple collapsed on the riverbank, exhausted and traumatized. They had survived, but they knew that they would never forget the Dogman. The couple eventually made their way back into their car, drove away from the park. They never went back, and they never spoke of what had happened. But the Dogman was still there, somewhere in that forest, waiting, watching, and waiting for its next victims. Thank you for watching my video, and I hope you liked it.